Do you know what nemesis means? By a horrible cunt. Me.
Snatch wasn't just a stylish crime caper. It was a chaotic production nightmare that nearly collapsed multiple times before becoming one of the most influential British films ever made. Brad Pitt learning an incomprehensible accent in just 48 hours. Jason Statham performing real-life illegal deals to prepare for his role. A diamond worth millions disappearing from the set. Guy Ritchie rewriting entire scenes the night before filming. And studio executives threatening to pull the plug when they couldn't understand half the dialogue. Today, we're diving into 20 weird facts about Snatch that will change how you see this cult classic forever. And stick around for our bonus fact: the disturbing real-life crime that happened on set that the cast and crew kept secret for over a decade. Number 20. The studio almost dubbed over Brad Pitt's entire performance. Brad Pitt's portrayal of Mickey O'Neill, the unintelligible Irish traveler, nearly got completely redubbed by the studio. When Sony executives first watched the daily, they were horrified that they couldn't understand a single word coming out of their biggest star's mouth. It wasn't artistic. It was catastrophic. Executive producer Matthew Vaughn revealed, "The Sony guys were in absolute panic. They spent $15 million for Brad Pitt and couldn't understand a word he said. There were serious discussions about hiring a voice actor to redub all his lines in a comprehensible accent. Guy Ritchie fought back fiercely, threatening to pull his name from the film entirely if they changed Pitt's performance. The compromise? Adding more subtitles than originally planned, and having Pitt record clearer versions of crucial plot lines. Next time you watch, notice how Mickey's accent mysteriously becomes slightly more understandable during key exposition." Number 19. Jason Statham was cast. Because he was an actual criminal. Before becoming an action star, Jason Statham was a street hustler selling fake jewelry and counterfeit perfume on London street corners, exactly like his character in the film. Guy Ritchie didn't discover Statham through traditional auditions. He met him while Statham was running his illegal market stall. Ritchie wasn't looking for trained actors, but authentic faces. He was so impressed with Statham's real-life hustling skills that he cast him on the spot in his first film, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. For Snatch, Ritchie had Statham return to street hustling for a week before filming began. "I wasn't acting in those early films," Statham later admitted. "Guy just told me to be myself," which was basically a con man trying not to get caught. The anxiety you see on screen when Turkish is trying to talk his way out of situations? That was real tension from my actual experiences. Number 18. The famous Desert Eagle. Scene caused a real-life injury. The scene where Bullet-Tooth Tony, Vinnie Jones, confronts 3 robbers with his Desert Eagle .50 became instantly iconic. What audiences didn't know was that during filming, the massive blank-firing pistol actually damaged Jones's hearing. The prop weapon used real gunpowder loads to create authentic muzzle flashes in the confined car interior. After multiple takes in the enclosed space, Jones experienced severe ringing in his ears. Production didn't stop. Instead, they simply had a medic check him between takes. Jones later revealed, "My ears were bleeding by the end of that day. The gun was so bloody loud in that car that I couldn't hear the director yelling, 'Cut!' I kept going with the scene while everyone else had stopped. I thought the ringing would go away, but I still have partial hearing loss in my right ear from that scene." The injury added to Jones's intimidating performance. The pain you see on his face when firing is completely genuine. Number 17. The dog swallowing. The squeaky toy wasn't CGI. It was dangerously real. One of the film's funniest moments shows the dog swallowing a squeaky toy, then squeaking with every movement. Audiences assumed this was clever sound editing or CGI. The disturbing reality? They actually had the dog swallow a modified, squeaky mechanism. The American Humane Association, which monitors animal treatment in films with their "No Animals Were Harmed" certification, initially refused to approve the film. The production veterinarian designed a special digestible squeaker with a transmitter that could be safely passed through the dog's system. The dog's trainer revealed it was a tiny biocompatible device, but it got stuck longer than we expected. We had to monitor the dog for 3 days before it finally passed. Guy was adamant about getting the authentic squeak timing rather than adding it in post-production. This practical effect approach nearly backfired when the dog showed signs of distress, requiring an emergency vet visit between shooting days. Number 16. Guy Ritchie changed the entire third act after a disastrous test screening. The original cut of Snatch had a dramatically different ending. In the initial version, Turkish and Tommy failed to escape their predicament. Mickey was killed in the boxing match, and Bricktop successfully fed multiple characters to his pigs. Test audiences were horrified by the nihilistic conclusion. Studio executives panicked at the overwhelmingly negative reaction, forcing Ritchie to rewrite and reshoot the final 30 minutes with just 2 weeks left in the production schedule. This explains why the third act has a distinctly different visual style. It was shot with a different cinematographer in a desperate rush. Producer Matthew Vaughn explained, "The original ending was brutal, almost nihilistic. Guy wanted to make a point about the criminal life having no winners, but audiences felt betrayed. We had to scramble to create something that kept the edge, but didn't leave people feeling emotionally destroyed." The reshoots depleted the film's budget so severely that several planned scenes had to be explained away, with Turkish's narration instead. Number 15. Brad Pitt created his character after failing to master a London accent. Brad Pitt's iconic performance as Mickey O'Neill wasn't the character Ritchie originally wrote. Pitt was initially cast to play a London gangster with a standard British accent. After weeks of dialect training, Pitt still couldn't convincingly master the London sound. Rather than drop out of the film, Pitt called Ritchie with a wild suggestion. What if he played an unintelligible Irish traveler instead? Ritchie, initially hesitant, agreed to a screen test just 3 days before Pitt's scenes were scheduled to shoot. The dialect coach who worked with Pitt recalled, "Brad called me in a panic. He said, 'I can't do this London thing convincingly, but I watched this documentary about Irish travelers, and I think I can do that.' He created that entire indecipherable dialect in literally 48 hours of intensive work. Ritchie had to quickly rewrite substantial portions of the script to accommodate this character change, including adding the bare-knuckle boxing subplot that wasn't in the original screenplay. Number 14. The diamond was stolen from the set. For real. In an instance of life imitating art, the prop diamond, a high-quality cubic zirconia in a custom case worth several $1,000s, actually disappeared from the set during production. The theft created a genuine panic among the crew, who initially thought it was a practical joke. As days passed with no diamond reappearing, production had to scramble to create a replacement prop with a much smaller budget. If you watch closely, you'll notice the diamond looks slightly different in certain scenes, most notably in close-ups versus wide shots. The property master later said, "We never found out who took it. There were rumors that one of the actors did it as method acting, but the replacement cost came out of my department's budget. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. A movie about a stolen diamond having its diamond stolen." Years later, an anonymous crew member claimed the theft was actually staged by Ritchie himself to generate authentic tension among the cast during scenes discussing the missing diamond. Number 13. Dennis Farina had a real panic attack. During the London scenes, Dennis Farina, who played cousin Avi, suffered a severe panic attack while filming in London. Farina had an intense fear of flying that he had kept secret from production. After the transatlantic flight to the UK, the accumulated stress triggered a medical emergency on set. During the scene where Avi first arrives in London, Farina's visible discomfort isn't acting. He was experiencing a genuine panic attack, with production having to stop several times while medics provided assistance. Ritchie kept the cameras rolling during these moments, incorporating Farina's authentic distress into the final cut. Farina later admitted, "I was absolutely terrified of flying back then. The flight to London was 8 hours of pure hell for me. When we started shooting, I was still coming down from the anxiety medication. What looks like Avi being irritated by London was actually me trying not to pass out on camera." His genuine disorientation added perfect authenticity to the character's fish-out-of-water experience in London. Number 12. Vinnie Jones threatened to quit over an insulting practical joke. Tensions on set reached a breaking point when someone placed a sex toy in former soccer player Vinnie Jones's personal locker with a note referencing a notorious sports controversy from his past. Jones, still transitioning from sports to acting, was so enraged, he walked off set and threatened to quit the production entirely. Production shut down for an entire day, while Guy Ritchie personally tried to convince Jones to return. The incident created bitter divisions among the cast, with suspicions about who was responsible. Jones agreed to return only after Ritchie promised to fire the culprit if identified. A crew member revealed Vinny was still proving himself as an actor and was sensitive about his football past. Whoever did it knew exactly which buttons to push. We lost a crucial day of shooting, and there was this weird tension afterwards. Some scenes had to be rewritten to minimize interaction between certain actors. The incident permanently altered relationships on set, with Jones refusing to socialize with the rest of the cast for the remainder of the shoot. Number 11. The boxing sequences resulted in multiple real injuries. The bare-knuckle boxing scenes weren't just convincingly brutal, they were actually dangerous. Despite choreography, multiple actors and stunt performers sustained real injuries during these sequences. Most notably, Brad Pitt cracked a rib, and one stunt fighter experienced a concussion that halted production. Pitt insisted on performing most of his own fight scenes, undergoing intensive boxing training for 6 weeks before filming. During one take, he absorbed an accidental full-force blow to the side that left him gasping for air. Rather than stopping, Pitt insisted they keep rolling, incorporating his genuine pain into Mickey's performance. The fight coordinator stated, "These weren't pulled punches with clever camera angles." Guy wanted authenticity, so we had the actors making controlled, but real contact. The sweat, blood, and exhaustion you see isn't makeup. By take 15, these guys were legitimately hurting each other. The production's insurance company threatened to revoke coverage after the third boxing-related injury, forcing Ritchie to use more stunt doubles than he had initially planned. Number 10. One of the most famous lines was almost cut by the studio. Do you know what nemesis means? A righteous infliction of retribution manifested by an appropriate agent, personified in this case by a horrible me. This iconic line from Bricktop nearly didn't make it into the final cut. Sony executives objected strongly to both the profanity and the violent pig farm scene it preceded. They demanded Ritchie replace it with something more audience-friendly, claiming test audiences were uncomfortable with the character's extreme cruelty. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because we're about to reveal how Ritchie saved this now legendary quote through a brilliant deception involving fake alternate takes and misleading the studio about what would actually appear in the theatrical cut. Ritchie shot multiple tamer versions of the scene, but deliberately had actor Alan Ford perform them poorly. In the editing room, Ritchie presented these awkward alternatives alongside the original, making the executives reluctantly concede that the original line, despite its harshness, was necessary for the character. Ford later said, "Guy told me to absolutely butcher the alternative lines. He wanted them to be so bad that the studio would have to accept the original. It worked. They chose authenticity over comfort." Number 9. The famous Z Germans scene caused an international incident. The sequence where Turkish and Tommy dispose of a car containing a dead body was filmed without proper permits in a protected London neighborhood. When residents discovered a film crew staging what appeared to be a violent crime scene at 3 a.m., they called the police, believing they were witnessing an actual murder. Armed police surrounded the location, briefly detaining cast and crew members at gunpoint until the situation was clarified. The incident made international news, with German diplomats formally complaining about the Z Germans dialogue, claiming it promoted negative stereotypes. Location manager John Scarr revealed, "We were trying to save money by not getting all the proper permits. Guy thought we could get away with a quick guerrilla-style shoot. Next thing we know, we've got police helicopters overhead, and Jason Statham is face down on the pavement with guns pointed at him." The German embassy sent a formal letter of protest the following week. The production was fined, and subsequent London scenes required a police liaison to be present at all times, an expense that blew the already strained budget. Number 8. The famous dog was actually 3 different animals. Audiences fell in love with the small dog that swallows the squeaky toy, but few realized this beloved character was actually portrayed by 3 different dogs. The production started with one dog, but its unpredictable behavior forced them to bring in replacements. The original dog refused to perform on command, while the second developed an apparent fear of the camera equipment. The third dog, which appears in most of the final cut, was a last-minute replacement found by a crew member in a local shelter just days before its scenes were scheduled. The animal trainer explained, "Each dog had different skills. One was great at the reaction shots, another was better at the physical comedy moments, and the third was the only one that would reliably stay in frame with the actors." In post-production, they stitched together performances from all 3 to create what looks like one consistent character. This explains why the dog sometimes appears slightly different between scenes, a continuity error most viewers never notice. Number 7. A real gangster threatened the production. Over character similarities. Midway through production, Guy Ritchie received a threatening message from a notorious London criminal who believed the character of Bricktop was based on him. The gangster demanded a payment of $100,000 for character rights, and made veiled threats about disrupting the production if his demands weren't met. Rather than paying or involving police, Ritchie arranged a private meeting with the individual. No one knows exactly what was discussed, but afterward the threats stopped, and rumors circulated that the gangster had been offered a small non-speaking role in the film. A production assistant claimed, "There was this really scary bloke who showed up on set one day. The security tried to stop him, but Guy said to let him through. They went to Guy's trailer for about an hour. When they came out, this terrifying guy was smiling and taking pictures with the cast. He's actually visible in one of the boxing match crowd scenes if you know where to look." The incident caused the production to significantly increase security measures for the remainder of the shoot. Number 6. The famous editing style wasn't planned. It was a desperate fix. Snatch's distinctive rapid cut editing style with freeze frames and visual filters wasn't Ritchie's original vision. It emerged as an emergency solution when the director discovered substantial continuity errors and performance issues in the footage that couldn't be resolved through conventional editing. The original rushes revealed lighting inconsistencies, mismatched action between takes, and even some equipment visible in frame. Rather than reshooting, which the budget wouldn't allow, editor John Harris suggested using stylistic cutting to turn these problems into a deliberate aesthetic. Harris later admitted, "Some scenes were a mess technically. Backgrounds didn't match, props moved between shots, and there were boom mics dipping into frame. By adding these freeze frames, speed ramps, and filters, we made the technical problems look like intentional style choices." What began as a salvage operation became one of the film's most celebrated aspects, influencing countless films and commercials for years afterward. Ritchie himself has acknowledged that some of his most distinctive visual trademarks originated from fixing mistakes. Number 5. Benicio del Toro was actually impossible to understand. On set, while Brad Pitt's unintelligible accent was a deliberate character choice, Benicio del Toro's mumbling performance as Frankie Four Fingers wasn't entirely acting. Del Toro was suffering from severe sleep deprivation throughout the shoot due to his commitment to another project filming simultaneously in Los Angeles. Del Toro was flying between London and LA weekly, leaving him in a constant state of jet lag. His exhaustion became so severe that he would sometimes fall asleep between takes and struggle to articulate his lines clearly when awake. Other actors reported having to lean in just to hear his directions during rehearsals. The script supervisor noted, "Benicio would arrive on set looking like a zombie. His speech was so slurred and quiet that the sound department had a crisis on their hands. A lot of his dialogue had to be re-recorded in post, but Guy liked the mumbling quality and told him to keep it for the character. This unplanned speech pattern perfectly matched his character's nervous, addictive personality, creating another instance where production challenges enhanced the final film." Number 4. The famous pig farm sequence led to real criminal investigations. The disturbing scene explaining how Bricktop's pigs dispose of human bodies wasn't just gruesome fiction. It was based on detailed research that proved so accurate, it triggered a police investigation into unsolved disappearances after the film's release. Ritchie had consulted with a former slaughterhouse worker about the most realistic way to portray body disposal. The technical advisor provided such specific details that when law enforcement professionals saw the film, they contacted the production company demanding to know their source. A former detective who worked on the case revealed, "After the film came out, we reopened 3 cold cases involving disappeared criminals known to have enemies in the farming industry. The disposal method shown in the film matched evidence we had found but never connected." The technical accuracy was disturbing enough to warrant formal interviews with the filmmakers. The investigation eventually led to an arrest in one case, though the connection to the film was never publicly acknowledged to avoid copycats. The advisor who provided the information was reportedly questioned by police, but faced no charges. Number 2, Brad Pitt's character was almost played by Robert Carlyle. Before Brad Pitt expressed interest in Snatch, the role of Mickey O'Neill was written for Robert Carlyle, who had recently starred in Trainspotting and The Full Monty. Carlyle had even begun dialect training and costume fittings when Pitt's surprise casting changed everything. The script originally called for Mickey to be a much more threatening, genuinely dangerous character based on real Irish traveler bare-knuckle boxers Ritchie had researched. When Pitt took over, the role transformed into something more charismatic and playfully enigmatic. Casting director Lucinda Sison revealed, "Robert was devastated when we had to tell him the role had been rewritten for Pitt. He'd spent weeks researching traveler communities and had even arranged to live with a family for authenticity. The original Mickey was darker, more volatile, a character who might actually kill someone in the ring, not just pretend to be knocked out." Carlyle was offered a different role as compensation, but declined. Years later, Ritchie admitted he had written a completely different third act specifically to showcase Carlyle's intensity, material that was abandoned when Pitt joined. Number 1, the film's pivotal diamond was real. For one day of shooting, for the close-up shots of the massive diamond, Ritchie insisted on using an actual precious stone rather than a prop. The production secretly arranged to borrow a real 86-carat diamond worth approximately $3.8 million from a London jeweler for a single day of filming under intense security. The insurance requirements were so extensive that only 5 crew members were allowed in the room during shooting. Armed guards were present throughout, and the stone traveled in an unmarked armored vehicle with a police escort. Most of the cast had no idea they had handled a real diamond worth millions. The jewelry consultant stated, "The authentic way light passes through a real diamond can't be faked convincingly in close-ups. CGI wasn't advanced enough then, and Guy was adamant about authenticity. The jeweler only agreed because his business was featured in the credits. Even the director wasn't allowed to touch it without gloves. Only the prop master and the security team could directly handle it. This extravagance nearly bankrupted the production, but created the stunning visuals that open and close the film. Footage so precise, you can actually see the camera operator reflected in the diamond's facet. Bonus fact, throughout filming, the entire production was under covert surveillance by Scotland Yard's Serious Crime Directorate. Intelligence suggested that real criminals were using the film's production as cover for planning actual jewelry heists in London, life imitating art in the most literal sense. Several background actors hired through open casting calls had connections to known criminal organizations. Authorities suspected these individuals were using their legitimate presence on set to gather information about security systems, camera placement, and response times at the filming locations, many of which were actual jewelry businesses and diamond merchants. A former detective revealed a decade after release. We had undercover officers working as production assistants, extras, even catering staff. We documented at least 3 known felons using the film as reconnaissance for planned robberies. The production company was cooperative once we explained the situation, but the cast was kept in the dark to maintain our cover. 2 arrests were quietly made during production, with suspects removed under the pretense of being fired for on-set behavior. Ritchie only learned the full story years later, when approached for permission to include the case in a police documentary, which he declined. Snatch wasn't just a film that defined an era of British cinema. It was a production that blurred the lines between fiction and reality in ways the audience never suspected. What appeared on screen as stylized crime fantasy was, behind the scenes, intersecting with the very criminal world it portrayed. 23 years after its release, Snatch remains a masterclass in turning production disasters into creative triumphs. Every continuity error transformed into a stylistic choice. Every casting challenge converted into an iconic performance. Every near catastrophe repurposed into authentic tension. If you haven't watched it recently, it deserves another viewing with these facts in mind. You'll never see Brad Pitt's mumbling, Jason Statham's nervousness, or that squeaking dog the same way again. If you enjoyed these revelations, hit subscribe for more deep dives into the films that define cinema history. Remember, in the world of filmmaking, just like in the criminal underworld, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.